So the story starts in 1939. And honestly, this is one of those stories where you already know life is going to be unfair from the first scene. We meet a young boy named Bernard Garrett. And this kid is not playing around. Instead of just shining shoes, he's basically running a secret business school. While working outside a bank, he deliberately works slowly, just so he can listen to conversations inside. Bankers talk, customers talk, and this kid is writing everything down. Real estate values, loans, how rich people think. That's already impressive. But then something happens that tells you exactly what kind of world he's living in. A white driver catches him listening, and instead of being impressed, he basically tells him, "Stay out of white people's business." Before we begin, please like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. It really helps small creators like me. Stay till the end for a massive plot twist. Welcome to America in the 1930s. That's the environment Bernard grows up in. At home, his father reads the notebook. And here's the sad part. He knows his son is brilliant, but he also says something painful. Basically, you're smart, but the system won't let you win. And that line tells you what this whole story is about. Not talent, not hard work, but barriers. Now fast forward 15 years. Bernard is grown, married, has a kid, and decides to move from Texas to Los Angeles. Because Texas at that time, not exactly opportunity friendly. They move into a tiny place with his wife's uncle. And the uncle is already judging him. Why don't you get a factory job? Because according to him, real estate is not something a black man should even try. But Bernard isn't thinking small. He's looking at property listings, analyzing prices, studying neighborhoods. He's not trying to survive. He's trying to build something big. Here's where you start to understand his mindset. Instead of buying property in black neighborhoods, he looks at white neighborhoods. Because he realizes something smart. Black areas are overcrowded. If people ever get the chance to move out, they will. That's long-term thinking. But of course, he doesn't have enough money. So his wife suggests finding an investor. They go to a jazz club owned by a flashy businessman named Joe. And honestly, Joe's personality is exactly what you'd expect. Confident, loud, showing off. He even jokes around instead of taking Bernard seriously. Bernard hates that. He walks out because he doesn't want flashy money. He wants serious business. So instead, Bernard goes directly to the building owner. And this scene is actually great because instead of begging, he negotiates. He breaks down the numbers, explains the future market, even suggests black professionals as tenants. Doctors, teachers, lawyers. The owner is impressed, but still refuses because risk. And let's be honest, the real risk he's thinking about is race. But Bernard doesn't quit. He looks at the owner's calendar, finds his bank, and goes straight to the bank manager. And this scene is painful but realistic. The secretary literally lies to his face, says the manager is busy, even though Bernard can see him sitting inside. So what does Bernard do? He waits for hours outside until the manager leaves. And then he pitches the deal right there on the street. That's persistence on another level. Later that night, something surprising happens. The building owner calls, and he agrees to support Bernard's loan. Why? Because he saw the determination. That moment hits hard, because sometimes in this story, the only thing stronger than racism is pure persistence. Bernard buys the building, and now comes one of the best scenes. A white tenant sees him working and immediately says, "You can't be the owner," because in her mind, that's impossible. So she calls the police. The police show up, laugh at him, until he shows the ownership papers. That moment is satisfying, because for once, the system has to accept reality. Now here's the smart part. One angry tenant moves out, but immediately, a wealthy black tenant moves in. And suddenly you see Bernard's vision working. He wasn't crazy. He was early. Business starts growing. Then the Irish owner offers him a partnership. And this is where things get interesting, because the plan is simple. Bernard finds the deals, negotiates, does the math, but the Irishman signs the papers, because banks trust him more. In other words, Bernard builds the empire. Someone else is the face. That tells you everything about the time period. And honestly, it works. They start buying properties, one after another, eventually owning dozens. Bernard moves his family into a beautiful home. For a moment, everything looks like it's finally working. But if movies have taught us anything, when things go up this fast, something is about to go very wrong. So at this point, Bernard's life is finally looking stable. He owns property. The business is growing. His family is comfortable. For a black man in the 1950s, this is already a huge achievement. But then reality shows up again. And it shows up in the worst way possible. The Irish partner suddenly dies. Just like that. No warning. No backup plan. And this is where the problem becomes obvious. Because legally, most of the business was under the partner's name. Which means Bernard suddenly has no face in the system. No access. No control. No protection. Basically, he built the empire, but the empire doesn't belong to him. Now here's the part that really shows how broken the system is. Bernard goes to the bank. The same bank that was happy to work with his white partner. But now, they won't even talk to him. Same business. Same properties. Same success. The only thing that changed is the color of the person standing in front of them. And honestly, this is the moment where most people would give up. But Bernard doesn't think small. He thinks strategically. If the system won't accept him, then he'll use the system against itself. And this is where the craziest idea in the whole story comes in. He decides he needs a white man, not as a partner, not as a boss, just a face. Someone who will sit in meetings, sign papers, and make the banks comfortable. Basically, someone to play the role society expects. And that's how we meet Matt Steiner. A regular guy, not rich, not powerful, just someone who works at a real estate office. And honestly, Matt looks like the last person who should be running a big business, which is exactly why Bernard picks him. Because the system doesn't actually care about competence, cares about appearance. First, Matt thinks this is a joke. Then Bernard explains the deal. You'll be the president on paper. I'll run everything behind the scenes. And here's the funny part. Matt isn't some genius. He has to be trained from zero. Bernard literally teaches him how to talk in meetings, what to say, how to act confident, how to look like he belongs. It's like watching someone prepare an actor for a role. Because that's exactly what this is. A performance. And once the performance starts, everything changes. Banks that ignored Bernard now offer loans. Investors suddenly become interested. Doors open instantly. Same business. Same numbers. Same strategy. The only difference is, now a white man is sitting at the table. That's both impressive and depressing at the same time. But success creates another problem. Power changes people. First, Matt is nervous and grateful. But slowly, he starts enjoying the attention, the respect, the authority. People are calling him sir. And when the world treats you like you're important, sometimes you start believing it. Meanwhile, Bernard expands even bigger. He moves into banking, not just real estate anymore, because he realizes something important. Real power isn't owning buildings. Real power is controlling money. If you own a bank, you control who gets opportunities. And for a while, everything works. They're growing, making deals.
Buying institution.
Quietly building a financial empire. And almost no one knows a black man is actually running it. But here's the thing about secrets. The bigger the success, the harder it is to hide. And eventually, the government starts paying attention. And this is where the story takes a darker turn. Because now the question isn't, can they succeed? The question becomes, what happens when the system realizes what they did? So at this point, the business is huge. They're not just buying properties anymore. They're buying banks, real banks, the kind of institutions that decide who gets loans and who doesn't. And this is where Bernard's real mission becomes clear. Because this was never just about money. He wants black families to finally get access to credit, to buy homes, to start businesses, to move forward. Basically, he's trying to change a system that was never built for them. And for a while, It actually works. But there's a problem growing in the background. And that problem is Matt. Remember, Matt was supposed to be the face. Just the face. But now, he's living the life. Nice suits, big offices, people treating him like a powerful businessman. And slowly, he starts acting like he actually built everything. There's one scene that really shows this. Matt is sitting at a fancy club, drinking, showing off, acting like a big shot. Meanwhile, Bernard is still working behind the scenes, doing the real work. And this is where you realize something uncomfortable. The system didn't just give Matt power. It gave him ego. Because when the world treats you like you're important, sometimes you forget who made you important. And then things get worse. The government starts investigating. Not for fraud, not for theft, but for something ridiculous. They accuse them of using a white man as a front. Think about that. The system forced them to do that to survive. And now the system is punishing them for it. Investigators start digging into their businesses, bank records, ownership structures, everything. And once the government decides to look at you, it's only a matter of time. Then comes the breaking point. Matt gets arrested. And under pressure, he turns. He cooperates with the authorities. And honestly, this moment is frustrating. Because without Bernard, Matt would still be a nobody. But when things get serious, he protects himself. Soon after, Bernard is arrested too. And this is where the story hits hard. Because it's not just about business anymore. It's about survival. His family is watching. His wife is watching. Everything he built is collapsing. The trial begins. And the charges are complicated. But the message behind them is simple. You weren't supposed to succeed like this. That's what the system is really saying. During the trial, Bernard makes a powerful statement. He explains why they did what they did. Not to cheat anyone, not to steal, but to work around a system that refused to work with them. Because if he walked into a bank as a black businessman, the answer was always no. So they created a situation where the answer could finally be yes. And here's the frustrating part. Everyone knows the business was legitimate. The properties were real. The loans were real. The profits were real. But the system doesn't care about fairness. It cares about control. In the end, Bernard is convicted. He goes to prison. And just like that, the empire he built is gone. But here's where the story does something important. It doesn't end with failure. Because after serving his sentence, Bernard comes back. And he starts again. Not as big, not as powerful, but still determined, still working, still building. And years later, the world finally recognizes what he did. Because his strategy, buying banks to give opportunities to underserved communities, becomes a model that others follow. His impact didn't disappear. It just took time for the world to catch up. This story isn't really about real estate. It's about something deeper. It shows how sometimes success isn't about talent or intelligence. It's about access. Bernard had the vision, the skill, the discipline, but none of it mattered until the system saw a white face. And that's the uncomfortable truth the movie is pointing at. Here's the deeper theory about the ending. The system didn't punish Bernard because he broke the law. The system punished him because he proved the system was broken. He showed that the barriers weren't about risk. They weren't about business. They were about control. And once you expose that, you become a problem. That's why the ending feels unfair. Because it is. But it also explains something important. Real change doesn't come from permission. It comes from people who succeed even when the system says they shouldn't. And that's why this story matters. Because Bernard Garrett didn't just build wealth. He proved that the door was never locked. It was just being held shut. Liking the video or subscribing might feel like a small thing to you, but for creators like me, it's a big deal. Your support really means a lot. Thanks for watching.